I am excited about this discussion. We have our friend Tony Russo, who's a sponsor and a partner in our Family Business Friday Zoom at noon program. There was a lot of activity yesterday in the State House with the budget, and we're going to hear all about that. This is a can't miss program because it doesn't matter where you are or what you do in New Jersey. Understanding the budget is essential because it is going to impact you. It's going to impact everybody. And so again, just many of you are regulars, but those who don't know us, I always like to just go through real quick who we are. So we're the Fairleigh Dickinson University Rothman Institute of Innovation and Entrepreneurship. I want to thank you all for taking time to come to our program. Our mission is to support, promote, and research entrepreneurship with a special focus on family and veteran businesses. We wouldn't exist without our sponsors, TD Charitable Foundation, Provident Bank, Sun Trust, CIANJ, Tony's organization. Some of our programs, we have student entrepreneurship programs we've had for 30 years to really help, encourage, and support student entrepreneurs. We have our Family Business Alliance. If any of you are family business members, we'd love for you to join us for our special programs and coaching and discussions. We have our Family Business Awards. Our 28th awards are coming on October 21st. And we may have an announcement. I may ask Sue to make an announcement later on, but we are, it's going to be virtual this year, but we're going to have live awarding via Zoom and discussion afterwards. So that's October 21st, our Family Business Awards. Our Veterans Launching Ventures program is a national program where we help veterans who are or their family members who are starting a business to help them develop a business plan. And we have a small business series advising small businesses. We're very proud about our Family Business Week that we created. Our website, familybusinessweek.com. It's the fourth week in October, and we're encouraging people then and really throughout the year to identify and support family businesses. 84% of the businesses around the world are family businesses, yet people don't really understand that they are the backbone of America. They're the ones, and just think about those businesses that are closed, every family member is unemployed. So it hits family businesses particularly hard, this whole 2020 pandemic. We have a program called Shop Family NJ where you can buy gift cards from your favorite restaurants and retailers. We have a TV show called Family Business World where I've interviewed incredible people like Tony and others to really highlight what family businesses are doing, how they got to where they are, and how they're supporting the community. It appears on rvntv.tv every Thursday at 10 a.m. and 8 p.m. Of course, our Family Business Fridays, this show that we will be continuing throughout the year. And again, I mentioned our Veterans Launching Ventures program, which has been really the most successful one we've had this year because of the Zoom platform. And we have a YouTube channel. So we encourage you to look up, just go to YouTube channel, Rothman Institute of Entrepreneurship. Tony and I are in different groups, but we're part of the New Jersey Restart Recovery Advisory Council, which is advising the governor about the restart. And Tony can talk a little bit about his experience there. So then, I just want to kind of lay the groundwork for our discussion today. Obviously, many of the small businesses have been closed. I like to show this chart to show that the unemployment experience that we're experiencing because of small business is more significant than what we've really experienced in our lifetime. The unemployment claims that we're reaching in April, we're reaching almost a record high. The recent numbers indicate that for total unemployment, it's about 8.7%. So the unemployment has come down, fortunately. I always like to show this to show that America is a small business country and the world are really small businesses. So 69.7% of the businesses are under 100 employees, 20% are under 500, and 10% are over 500. So now we want to get to this budget discussion. We want to spend, an hour will go by quickly. So the $32.7 billion budget includes the millionaire's tax, authorizes $4.5 billion in borrowing, and some taxpayers are eligible for a $500 rebate. A lot of controversy about the budget, and we want to take it from a small family business perspective. One of the things that we want to show, there are a number of organizations coming on all sides of this. There's some that support, this organization actually supports the millionaire's tax. There are others that are against it. We want to talk about this budget from a small and family business perspective. This chart really shows the breakdown as a percentage of your income of what you pay in taxes. But you also, and part of this is really understand that some wording is misleading. So the same organization talks about many states levy higher tax rates on top earners. Well, those many states are only five states. So there really aren't many states that have a higher tax than we do in New Jersey. And so it's important to really kind of look and question everything that you have. So again, I want to turn it over to Tony Russo, and we're going to have, it's less of an interview, kind of a general discussion. And Tony, welcome. I'm going to stop sharing, and I'd love for you to kind of go through what's been happening in Trenton. So thank you for taking time.
And I appreciate it, Dale, and happy Friday, everybody. And like you said, Dale, let's kind of keep this conversational and informal because there's still a lot of information that we need to digest. I'm going to start at the rooftop, just kind of go broad and then kind of work into some details. And if folks have questions, we can try to answer them. But let me start by saying that yesterday the Senate and the Assembly passed a budget. It's about, like Dale's slide showed, 32.7. But if you go back to the June 3-month budget, it's really in essence a $40 billion budget, $40 billion, 500 million. And just to kind of give you some context, back in February before the pandemic, the governor had proposed a $39 billion budget, which, by the way, was about $1 billion more than the previous year's budget. So, it's kind of antithetical when you think about it, that the budget during these kind of hard economic times that the state is looking to spend more money. I know most of the business groups were surprised when the governor gave a budget update in August with all the new taxes, and I'll kind of go through them. But as of now, he hasn't signed a budget. We expect him to do that probably early next week. The question is, the governor does have what's called a line item veto. And you've probably read about what's called a Christmas tree item. Some people refer to it as pork in a budget, right? So it's the essential spending, and then, rightfully so, a lot of the legislators and stakeholders out there try to jockey and position themselves to get money for projects in their communities, and I can kind of go through some of them. But just to give you a sense of, out of that $40 billion, $500 million budget that's sitting on the governor's desk, $200 million of that is those Christmas tree items. And I'll give you examples. In Essex County, there's a golf tee-off program for $4 million. Hinchcliffe Stadium in Patterson, many of you probably know where that is. It's been laying fallow for so many years. That's $1 million allocated for that. And then there's a lot of upgrades to township halls and to sewer authorities, again, to the tune of $200 million. So that's a lot of money going to these special projects. But going back to the overall budget, what surprised us is that the legislature actually added $500 million to the governor's proposal. So that was a surprise. The other thing that sticks out, and I've been doing this now 20 years, is just how condensed the budget process was. Again, just to give you some context, it was released, the new budget was released in late August. The legislature had about a month to kind of prepare it, take testimony, which really wasn't robust. Usually what they would do is hold public hearings throughout the state, hear from interested parties. Most of the business groups would have testified. I know we sent in comments, and then they basically hear from all the commissioners and the agencies. Well, they had to condense that. They only heard from the state treasurer and a couple other, like the labor commissioner went up. So it's disappointing, Dale, from just a good governance perspective, that there really wasn't a lot of public input. There wasn't a lot of due process. Quite frankly, there wasn't a lot of detail that was made public on how they arrived at some of these numbers. And I'll give you what I thought was kind of remarkable. About 2 weeks ago, the state treasurer gave an update before both the Assembly and Senate committees, and then the Office of Legislative Services, which, by the way, if you don't know what OLS does, they're a nonpartisan group. Mm-hmm. There are a bunch of attorneys, analysts, economists that are supposed to give this is what we see as the forecast. And they were off. So OLS had projected, 1.5 billion in additional revenues that they think will come in, where the state treasurer was saying, I think it's going to be $1.5 billion less. So the governor did propose a bunch of taxes. A lot of them you've probably read about. Obviously, Dale mentioned the ones that stuck. and that are on the budget is, and I'll start with the millionaire's tax. So if you're earning $1 million or more, your rate will go up to 10.75% if this budget is signed, which I think he's going to sign it. That's supposed to raise about 400 million. And I could tell you, it was kind of interesting during a debate. A couple of legislators said, well, geez, I remember we've been working on this millionaire's tax for years now. And the number had originally been like 600 million, 700 million. Obviously, I know from our end, and I talked to a lot of accountants, a lot of bankers, a lot of business owners that have since moved out of New Jersey. So whether or not they're actually going to raise that 400 million from this millionaire's tax is yet to be seen. I think what you're going to see is, in my opinion, you're going to see more businesses making a decision to probably close up shop and move or relocate. Just to give you an idea, a couple of days ago, one of our members asked me, what it would take to move to Delaware. And this is a manufacturing facility that's been in New Jersey for 60 years. They're going to be subject to not so much this millionaire's tax, but let me just focus on that, because I think people in their minds think of individuals making that $1 million or more. A lot of that wealth and business really comes from small business, right? It's generational families. I mean, Dale, you're a champion of these family-owned businesses. Many of them are generational.
Yeah.
They've built up that wealth, but what more importantly, they provide jobs.
Yep.
And they provide employment. And so what'll be interesting to see is whether or not these small businesses that have attained that stature will stay in New Jersey or move. So
Tony, let me ask you, so it's gross income. So it's on $1 million of gross income. So it's not after expenses or anything.
Correct.
That's $1 million of gross income.
Correct.
So I mean, one of the questions that I always ask is, why is it that it's either tax cuts or raising taxes? Why not cut taxes for the job creators and raise taxes on the people that aren't job creators? Why is it that Trenton can't separate those two? Because those are our small businesses, so the job creators. We don't want to hurt the job creators. Why can't they break that down like that?
It's a good question, Dale, and I know that the business groups all lobby and advocate for that, but for whatever reason, it just didn't resonate this year. And they didn't go in that direction, right? So you have choices, like you said, either you increase taxes or you could cut spending. We've always advocated that the right thing to do is increase the tax base, right? The number of people paying. So how is it that you can attract investment? And I thought one member said it well, that investment's going to go where it's welcomed, right? So if they feel that the state is of the position where they're going to welcome that investment, tax base grows. But unfortunately, Dale, I don't have a good answer for you. They didn't want to go in that direction. And I think it's disappointing because, again, when I think about the lack of due process and how this budget was handled, it was rushed through. I mean, we're talking about billions of dollars, billions. Mm-hmm. And what surprises me is there's really not a lot of discourse. Nobody really gets into the weeds. We're talking that much money, and yet it goes through rather quickly. So we talked about the millionaire's tax. Mm-hmm. And the other one that really stung business is this corporate business tax. Mm. So a couple of years ago, Senate President Sweeney, when they were negotiating the state budget, unfortunately, they added what was supposed to be a surcharge of 2.5% that was supposed to expire. Because right now, our CBT rate is about 9.5%. Mm-hmm. And now with this budget, it seeks to make
So Tony, for those, what's the CBT rate? For those that don't know, what?
Yeah, the corporate business tax rate is 9.5%. So if you're a C Corp, you're paying that CBT.
Right.
And if you look at the three top revenue generators for the state, it's the gross income tax, mm-hmm. it's the sales tax, mm-hmm. and it's the corporate business tax. I mean, right. The corporate business tax in good days maybe could bring in $4 to $5 billion. Wow. And then the other two taxes, just to give you an idea, gross income and sales tax, that accounts for almost like 27 billion, So those are the top ones. And then you have motor fuels tax, and then you have some other taxes. But so the CBT rate, and if you are a C Corp, you really need to talk to your accountants and your partners and planners, because it's going to go up to 11.5%. So it's going to be made permanent. It's going to be extended to 2023. And I looked this up, Dale, and I was surprised to find out that would make New Jersey the second highest in the country behind Iowa.
Wow. Behind Iowa, really?
Yeah, which is kind of interesting.
That is interesting, yeah.
And just to give you an idea, Pennsylvania is at about 9.9%.
Mhm.
New York. So our neighbors were or are where we were, but unfortunately now, again, that's going to be 11.5% if you're paying the CBT. And they
Wow.
expect to generate about 250 million with the new tax.
Yeah.
So
Well,
those are
Tony,
the,
at least we don't have to worry about property taxes, right, in New Jersey. That so
right.
this is on top
Sure.
of the. It's. I mean, it really is. It's crazy.
Yeah, it is. And when you think about, and again, it depends on who you talk to, but the governor had proposed a whole bunch of other, what I would have called optics taxes, right? The boat tax. There was talk about that in New Jersey, if you buy a boat, you're capped at paying a sales tax of about 20,000, not whatever. So he was going to lift that cap, and that was going to generate, I think originally, not a lot of money. So think about this in context of the 40 billion. The governor's budget was going to bring in about 7 million from the boat tax, the
Mhm.
limousine tax. So if you take limousine services, he was going to start taxing that, and that was going to bring in about 13 million. Not a lot of money.
Right.
So
Right.
it's more the optics, right? It's the, okay, let's go after, limos and boats. Cigarette tax, I got to tell you, Dale, a lot of people don't realize it, but the cigarette tax, he was looking to increase that tax to an extra $1.63 a pack.
Wow.
You
Wow.
know, $5 a pack of cigarettes. And I didn't notice, but I guess a pack of cigarettes in New Jersey goes for about $10 or $11.
Really. Really.
But the good news is those taxes are off the table, as a couple of convenience stores told me. They follow the cigarette tax because a lot of times they need the people to come in. When they buy the cigarettes, they buy other stuff.
Right.
And
Right.
what would have happened is they would have just gone to Pennsylvania and New York to buy the cigarettes if it was cheaper. But again, that's off the table. The boat tax is off the table. The limo tax is off the table. And then the other one that was really strange that the governor proposed was something called qualified business income.
Mm.
So if you were, again, earning the $5 million or more and you wrote off some of your business income, this ties back to the Trump tax cuts.
Mm.
And the governor was pretty transparent about it. Said, look, if you benefited from that tax cut, he was going to try to collect about 75 million from, again, what's called a QBI tax. That came off the table.
Mhm.
So the only two taxes that really stuck were the CBT and the millionaires tax. But then again, the governor is going to go through the budget, do a line item veto maybe on these pet projects. He can't add more to the budget. He could certainly take away.
Right.
And so the thought is, though, I think he's going to sign it as is, and we'll have to see. One issue that impacts a lot of the folks on the call today is, and it really was off budget, and it was signed, I guess it was late summer, but something that's called the health insurance tax, right? So everybody pays a health insurance premium called the HIT tax. New Jersey passed legislation to assess 2.5% to your premiums. And that's supposed to generate about 300 million. So just keep in mind now when you renew, right, the open cycle is like October.
Enrollment, right.
Yeah, open enrollment. And so your taxes on the HIT side, again, the health insurance premiums will go up. Another one that's really unrelated to the budget, and I kind of could explain it because some members were confused. The gas tax is going to go up starting next Thursday.
Right.
Tell members, if you don't want to pay an extra dime a gallon, load up on your gasoline now, because on October 1st, the gas tax in New Jersey is going to go up 9.3 cents a gallon. So why does that happen? And this is where a lot of people don't really appreciate that. Back in 2016, when Governor Christie was around and they phased out the estate tax, and the issue was very controversial. It took months, it took a couple of years to get the gas tax increased. Then they built some language into the law that basically said New Jersey has to raise $2 billion in motor fuels taxes each year. If they fail to raise that $2 billion, they're mandated, the treasurer and the governor can raise the gasoline tax. Now, the theory is if you raise more than $2 billion, you could bring that gas tax back down. But what happened with the pandemic? People were working remotely.
Right. Right.
People were home, so that we didn't collect that money. And so now, unfortunately, come October 1st, you're going to see an increase in the gas tax.
Well, they've never hit the number, right? It's been an increase. It's been an increase every time.
We're
right?
correct. Yep.
You know, even before the pandemic, they didn't hit the number.
And so it's counterintuitive because as vehicles become more fuel efficient, now maybe the outside folks in New York, Pennsylvania aren't going to come to New Jersey and gas up. It's going to be tough, Dale, to raise that $2 billion constantly, right?
Yeah.
So on top of that, the tolls went up for the Turnpike Parkway to handle some infrastructure projects. And the important thing, just going back to the gas taxes, New Jersey's mandated, and it was a constitutional, it was a ballot question back in 2016 that said that money cannot be used for anything else but infrastructure upgrades.
Infrastructure, right.
So that's the money and that's allocated there. But the other thing that was hanging out there that's very controversial about this bill is the governor's going to borrow up to, now it's about $4.5 billion through something called the Municipal Liquidities Fund, the MLF, with the Federal Reserve. They'll go out and bond this money. Now they want to pay it back in 10 years and not 30 years, but it's still, they're going to borrow this money. They're going to borrow $4.5 billion. What's interesting is, again, when the law was passed to allow for the bond, and this was in July, the legislature has to approve it. So what happened? The Republicans sued, went all the way up to the New Jersey Supreme Court. The Supreme Court ruled in the governor's favor and said, we'll allow you to borrow. You don't have to get voter approval, but here's the qualifier. You have to certify and justify that you need to borrow the money because of loss of revenues associated with COVID because of the pandemic. And that's been the battle, Dale, is we're trying to get details on how much did the state really lose in terms of revenues in the last 6 months. And on Monday, there is the commission that's made up of 4 in the legislature that has to approve it, and they're going to have a hearing. I'm hoping to testify on Monday.
Oh, good.
Hopefully they take testimony. But that rubbed a lot of people the wrong way, because if you look, going back to the rooftop, he proposes this $40.5 billion budget. And at the end of fiscal year 2021, next June, he wants to have a $2.5 billion, or I should say 2.2 billion surplus. So a lot of people say, well, why are you going to borrow if you're going to end up having a surplus? Lower the amount you're going to borrow.
Right.
So that became an issue. Park that for a second. The other thing that came up during the testimony, and we still don't have a clear answer on, through the CARES Act money, the state itself received, and again, depending on what you read, whether it's $3.5 billion or $4 billion, that has been allocated to the state, and they in turn are supposed to give it to the counties and municipalities, and they're supposed to pay for, again, lost revenues or expenses associated with COVID. Of that $4 billion or $3.5 billion, the governor's really only spent about $200 to $300 million. Through an executive order, he's going to set up a website, an Office of Compliance. Unfortunately, it's not going to happen until October, where people were asking, well, geez, if you have this $3.5 billion parked somewhere, why not try to integrate that into the state budget? And so the answer was, well, the federal guidelines keep changing. Really don't know how that money is going to be spent. But I want everybody on the call to realize that that is good. That's a good amount of money that we're going to track. And I think all the other business groups are going to track to make sure if there's small business relief, additional grants, additional loans, we're going to advocate for that. So I'm just looking at my list. So the one other issue that was controversial that's off the table was something called the baby bonds, right? You probably read it. Right. And this is where, if the budget, if it was included in the budget, what the governor wanted to do, and it was Senator Booker's idea, that any child that's born to, I guess, and I forgot the threshold, I think it was maybe 75,000, I might be wrong with that number, that every baby born between October 1st and next June, the state would buy and put $1,000 into the bond market. And the hope is that he or she, when they turn 18, could then use that money for college or other expenses. That would have probably cost the state, according to the treasurer, about $75 million. But that's off the table. The legislature really didn't have an appetite for that.
Right.
So that's so. The other thing that was controversial, going back to the millionaires tax, the deal that the governor struck with the Senate president and the speaker, was started next fiscal year, which starts next July, that people are going to get a rebate check. They're going to get a check for $500 if you qualify. And people have called it a gimmick. Why not give that money out this year? Why wait till next year? And the reason they're going to wait till next year is because guess what? Next year, and this is not on people's radar yet, but the governor's up for election, Senate's up for election, the Assembly's up for election.
Right.
So what happens in an election year, Dale? You know this. You've been around long enough.
It's crazy.
You're probably not going to see new taxes next year.
Right,
You know,
right.
It's a safe bet that come next fiscal year, and when they start thinking about FY22 budget, which will start again in February and then it'll go through June, provided that nothing else happens, you're probably not going to see any new budget increase. I should say tax increases. But so it's a little bit all over the place in terms of, and I'll kind of pause there because I know, and again, I talked about the pet projects that are in there, but you have the borrowing, you have the taxes, you didn't have a lot of detail out. The ask, and you and I have been on this mission, Dale, for a long time, like what can companies do?
Right.
I hope the takeaway is that I think businesses need to really start to activate and mobilize and make their voices heard, right?
Yeah.
And that, because at the end of the day, if you're paying that CBT, that millionaire's tax, gas tax, the cost of living in New Jersey is only going to keep going up.
Right.
And it's at a point now where we got to go back to the legislature and they need to appreciate how businesses operate and how business, because again, the pandemic is still there. The executive orders, just to give folks an idea, I think he's up past 50 executive orders that he's since March. Think about that, 50. It's a lot of information to absorb, right? And gyms started opening up and indoor dining, but a lot of businesses are still being restricted. And I could tell you, again, Dale, you and I have talked about this, that since March, and I remember when we were on a call with the governor's office, again, going back to March, I heard loud and clear from our companies, cash flow was going to be an issue, right? It was all about managing that cash flow, receivables, payables. What do we do? Hold on. I got to tell you, it hasn't changed. As a matter of fact, and this is what we tried to communicate to the legislature, when you think about when next April comes and people have to pay their taxes, what's going to happen? They call it the April surprise. Second quarter, third quarter of 2020, a lot of businesses are off. I mean, to the tune of, and again, we represent a lot of different kind of companies. The business owners that I've talked to, they're telling me they're down 30% to 80%.
Yeah.
And what you're going to do is you're going to feel that effect the fourth quarter.
Yep.
Right? Maybe
Exactly.
November, December. Maybe you're going to feel that effect next year. I also talk to a lot of our bankers, right? It's the canary in the coal mine. I say to the bankers, are you giving out loans? Forget about PPP.
Right.
Are you giving out loans, traditional loans to businesses for capital equipment purchases? And a lot of them saying, no, businesses are hesitant to take out that loan because they're just uncertain. They're just not sure, what the economy is going to be like given the pandemic. And I got to tell you, Dale, what doesn't help here, it's hard enough to deal with this pandemic, but then you throw in a national presidential election.
Right.
And
On top of it,
everybody's waiting for November 3rd to come and go.
It's the perfect storm. It's really the perfect storm. I heard on the news the other day that 90% of the restaurants, I had dinner in New York yesterday, 90% of the restaurants in New York couldn't pay their rent, their full rent. I don't know what the number is in New Jersey. And I guess as I listen to you, and nobody knows more about the budget than who's a business advocate than you do. I'm not hearing either Democrats or Republicans. And one of the things that I say is that we've got to move away from party. Really, we have to, in politics and in Washington, Trenton, they say there are no permanent friends, no permanent enemies, or permanent interests. And our permanent interests are for small family businesses, and you have big businesses as well. But I guess I'm not hearing from either side any special carve-outs we're getting carve-outs for, amusement things and other things, and carve-outs for the businesses. And if it's not this year, this is the year when businesses have suffered more than anywhere. And we have a budget, and it's kind of tone deaf to the fact that the people on this call and the people that will view this are really suffering. And I guess, and it's not just the governor, it's like everybody. I'm lost. I don't understand how they continue to be blind to the employers in the state. What's your sense? Is it we're not yelling loud enough? We don't have lobbyists? What is it?
Yeah, it's a great question, Dale. and I wish I had an answer for you, but I hate to say it, but I think we're all left scratching our heads because I think a lot of the business groups did the op-eds, did the phone calls, talked to legislators. And when you talk to a legislator one-on-one, they seem always empathetic. They always understand where you're going through. But then when it comes time for the vote and you see a vote like what happened with the budget, you're perplexed. You're like, well, wait a minute. This doesn't make sense. Right. So just, give an idea of like NJEDA, they were giving out loans and loans, grant programs. And I think, and this is the state now, and I could be off, but it's only about $100 million, right? And a lot of them were capped too. So if you qualify for a grant loan, it was maybe 10,000 here and there. It wasn't a lot of money. And that's what we tried to tell them, right? Forget about the PPP. Actually, the PPP saved a lot of our companies from going bankrupt, right? The problem is, like a lot of them said, Tony, it's great. I kept my people employed, but if I can't generate the revenue, I know I'm going to have to tackle that forgiveness part. And, now they're going to have to figure out how do they capture it on their income taxes, business taxes for next year. But, I agree with you in that it just, I've been doing this 20 years now in New Jersey. I've never seen it where there just hasn't been that due process. There hasn't been that dialogue. There hasn't been that exchange of that trade, like you said. Well, okay, if you're going to raise CBT, are you going to reduce something else? But there's more coming. And look, some of the other bills I wanted to mention now law, and this is everybody on this call should be aware of, but the governor also signed a workers' compensation bill. And what does that mean, right? And we were, again, perplexed. Basically it says that if you're an essential employee, now don't think of them as healthcare workers, it was basically manufacturers, anybody that didn't have to stop. And that worker comes down with COVID. The rebuttable presumption now in law is that it happened at your place of employment and it triggers workers' comp. I've been asked, well, what does that mean? Now, I think the language in the law, and I have to verify this, but I think your rating is not going to be impacted. But people are left, and I was just on the phone with a landscaper the other day, and he said, Tony, we had somebody come down with COVID. I paid his sick time. He took 2 weeks off. What does this mean? I said, look, I don't know what it means, and we'll see what happens now that it's law, but it's something that I think employers just need to appreciate and realize that now that's on the books now, that somebody could say it happened at work and it could trigger workers' comp and claims. The other thing, Dale, and this is where I want to really stress to everybody, mind-boggling, the unemployment insurance fund, pre-pandemic, New Jersey was solvent, right? Credit goes to Hal Wirtz, the commissioner, Governor Christie. It continued with Governor Murphy and Commissioner Angelo. We were solvent. New Jersey had a $2 billion unemployment insurance fund for unemployment. And what happened? Pandemic happens. 1.5 million New Jerseyans got unemployed. CARES Act money comes in. Again, the stat that's out there, the commissioner has testified to this. He's paid out, New Jersey's paid out, and again, most of it's the CARES Act money, $15 billion.
Wow.
In unemployment insurance,
Wow.
$15 billion. So the question is, what's going to happen when the dust settles and the pandemic is over? How's New Jersey going to replenish that unemployment insurance fund? That's going to be a fight because they're talking right now about a possible $900 million payroll tax.
Wow.
It gets back to what you and I have always said, and I really urge everybody not to be shy, know who your legislators are, voice your opinion and say, I can't survive if additional taxes are imposed on my business, if I don't have any kind of relief. And these are the things that are on the horizon that we just need to be prepared about. I mean, it's going to happen. Nobody knows when this pandemic is going to be lifted. The governor keeps extending the executive orders. And that's the part that is really unknown at this point is, when does that all end? When do we go back to whatever normal, new normal, what used to be? But these are things that I just want to make sure people understand. Another bill, right, that's going to probably be signed into law, passed yesterday, but New Jersey is going to be the first state in the country to ban paper bags. Not just plastic, but single-use paper products.
Really?
So styrofoam, styrene. I mean, so that's a bill that was just now passed by the legislature. It's on the governor's desk, and likely they're going to sign it.
And Tony, but that's the perfect example that the people who are advocating for getting rid of paper are more active than the people who run small businesses. But
Correct.
one of the tricks that, and I see some people are talking about politics, we as voters get so excited, and the media and others do this, about picking a party, picking a person, and our mantra is vote them out of office. But the reality is that you need to advocate for something, not against something. And we make that mistake. When we talk about politics, we're for Trump, we're against Trump. That's not the issue. The issue is we're for small business. And if there's a Democrat who is supportive of small business, then support him. If there's a Republican, then support him. But we've got to move away from that as business people, because our interests are the business. And Democrats have done good things for business, and Republicans have done good things. But I think that's an important thing that I think, you and I have been at this for a while in Trenton, so we take it for granted. You don't want to create enemies. But we as business folks, as small business people, have to really speak to that. And I don't know if you want to say more about that.
Yeah, I think you hit it on the head, right? We're always reacting to things.
Mm-hmm.
Very reactive. I keep telling members, we got to become proactive.
Mm-hmm.
We got to forward, and you've done it, Dale, with the Entrepreneurship program and the Entrepreneurship zones. I mean, those are the kind of ideas that we need to kind of put in legislators' minds and say, this is something that businesses need. Now, we're trying, right? So just to get back to COVID, loud and clear, employers need that liability protection against frivolous lawsuits. I mean, we heard a couple of weeks ago that New Jersey's got a case now where an employee filed a court case against their employer for negligence because he felt that his coworkers had symptoms of COVID and that they weren't doing enough to protect them. It's going to play out in court.
Right.
And that is probably a big concern to a lot of our businesses. They say, Tony, if I do the right thing, if I abide by CDC guidelines, if I buy masks and socially distant and keep the remote workforce, but people have to come in and we put plexiglass in and I do everything right, am I still going to be sued? And you know that New Jersey is one of those states where you could probably file a lawsuit and you're going to have to play it out in court. So it's one of those things where, we just, like you said, I think business needs to get to a point where we become proactive. We need to coalesce around each other. The sad part, Dale, is because businesses are different,
Mm-hmm.
like we focused on family-owned small businesses, but
Right.
big pharma, oil, gas, chemical, if we all stuck together as businesses, we would be the loudest voice in the state.
Yeah, and I'm almost thinking really nationally that, and it's not about party, but it just seems like, there's a group of folks, regardless of party, that are for kind of, big business, and there are folks that are for big government, and the small folks, the mom and pops get, we almost need a small business party, and just some group that, because they're good people. One of the realities is that it's easy to hate somebody, but you sit with somebody on either side of the bench, they're good people and they want to do well, but they are forced to listen to the loudest voices. And if banning paper from grocery stores is the loudest voice in the room, and you hear crickets from small business, I know you've been doing it, but you can't do it alone. You need your businesses to really be behind you.
Right, they have to go down to Trenton. Yeah, look, they have to go down to Trenton. They have to be known. I think I mentioned in one of your prior events, just to give, again, people on the call an idea of a 2-year cycle in Trenton, right? Mm-hmm. And that cycle ends next year. They hear more than 10,000 bills, right? So 10,000. They're bombarded with issues. It's up to them, and it's up to us to tell them what to prioritize and what should come up to the pile. And I think that's the fight. That's where the debate happens, as far as what are the priorities, what's the agenda of the governor, what's the agenda of the legislature, what is it that we want from businesses, and we have to be articulate, clear. More importantly, we got to keep the ask simple. If we keep the ask simple and say, okay, we're not going to get everything, but we may get something, and that's the shift I think is needed if we're ever going to turn the ship around, because unfortunately, I think, and again, think about how this budget played out. I think we all thought that the budget was either going to be flat or it was going to go down. And now to really be shocked with added spending, new taxes, I could almost assure you, and I've talked to some of our accountants, they're in for an April surprise next year, and it's going to be on the negative side.
Right.
You know, they're just not going to see these revenues. And then what happens? You know, and then what tax are they going to focus on? You know, and remember, the sales tax was always an issue out there. I even heard from one accountant, they're preparing maybe the estate tax comes back. I don't want to panic people, but the point is anything could be put back on the table, anything. And so we shouldn't take things for granted. And I think we have to be vigilant, and we have to be proactive. And I think at this point, I think people are probably, and I've talked to a lot of our members, Dale, what kind of surprises me is it's a mixed bag in terms of when they're bringing their employees back. Some have brought them back. Some may not bring them back until next year.
Right.
Some may stay remote, you know. But more importantly, here's what they all want. They want the end to the pandemic. When is it? Is it going to be the vaccine? Is it the presidential election? Who knows? But you and I agree on this. What businesses they don't like uncertainty.
Right. Right.
You know, as long as that uncertainty is out there, we'll never get back to a new normal where, you know, the money is exchanged, there's flow, there's business. I still deal with a lot of our businesses that, again, they're saying that people just are holding on to their money. They're not making deals because they just don't know what tomorrow's going to bring.
Right. And so, Tony, do you, I mean, one of the things in doing some research for this and going online and looking at what charts exist, I was actually very impressed by New Jersey Policy Perspective, which is supporting the millionaire's tax. They've been very aggressive. They put out a lot of documents, but I didn't see as many kind of graphs and other things for the business. Maybe we can work together to put some things together and really come out with some policy, because those graphs speak loudly. And I don't know, and I know it's not your, and I know NJBIA, Michelle does some things, but it was interesting in looking at it. I didn't see as many things to say why, what's your sense of that?
So that's a good question. It goes back to resources. I know we're a small staff here at CIANJ, but I think BIA, they do put out that kind of data.
Yeah.
So, I'll give Michelle and her team, Michelle Segurka, her credit, that they do have people on the team that actually could push that information out. I think the state chamber does something similar too. So, but I agree with you, Dale. I think the natural nexus there is with our higher ed community, with groups like yours. I mean, right? Think about where you may have the resources and the experience and the wherewithal to help us put together that data. That's one part of it. Here's the most important part of it. You got to get Trenton lawmakers to pay attention to that, and then take action on that. And sometimes I got to tell you, there's a lot of frustration because you've been around long enough. It's study after study after study after study, data after data. Does it resonate? Does it sink in? Does it become actionable? And that's the push and pull that happens in Trenton. And it, I just tell people, you got to be a shepherd, right? You got to keep everything together and kind of focus. And then you got to be a bulldog. You got to really, be aggressive and say, here's why this matters. And, unfortunately, businesses are doing more with less. I can't begin to tell you how many businesses I've talked to that are, people that work for them, they're wearing multiple hats. They're doing operations, HR, they're doing security, it's just, they don't, again, with this pandemic, it just knocked everybody down. And if I can use an analogy, I think we were slowly getting back up. And when this budget came out, it's almost like being punched in the stomach and saying, yeah, we're going to put you back down, because quite frankly, new taxes, just not a good budget at all. Not a good budget.
And it's tough. And now the other thing is, if there's a reason to join the chambers, the chambers are as close to, and Rothman and others, to be your lobbyists. And so it's important. You say, well, the chamber membership, I don't have money for that, but you have to do that, because these are the kinds of things that happen if you don't have the advocacy out there. And I know it's a tough time for chambers. I know it's a tough time for us. And so, but really, I hope, the message that we give almost every week is, I know you're busy. I know you're running your business. I know you're overwhelmed. I know you have to deal with all sorts of chaos, but it's important to get to know your legislator. It's get to know the people in state government, EDA, your banker, your accountant, in order to survive what's coming up. And it's not going to get easy probably until 2022 will be closer to normal than 2021. but it's really important to support that. And I've talked to folks and people say, I know I need to do it, but they don't have they have the chutzpah to start to run their business, but not the chutzpah to really, because it's something different. And I don't know if you have any tricks, or if you're not, if you're not comfortable doing that, Tony, what do you tell somebody who's just...
I think businesses could help in two ways, right? They could either put in that sweat equity where they join a group, but more importantly, be willing to testify in Trenton on an issue, right? I mean, now they're doing it virtually, so it's easy. You don't have to take a road trip down there. And this is not easy to talk about, but the second part is money, political money. And I remember my former boss, Hal Bozarth, he would always say, corporate contributions are legal in New Jersey. It's the system. It's the way we operate. Don't be shy to support, like you mentioned before, Dale. It could be a pro-business Democrat or Republican. Support them, right, financially. Raise money. Contribute those political dollars. That's the way the system works. Talk to them. Get to know them. If they don't know your issue, then, shame on us. Because then they're going to act. And again, going back to that, there's 10,000 bills. It's a part-time legislature. Let's not forget that. They're in part-time Mondays and Thursdays. Most of them are either, working other jobs now. A lot of them, and we've talked about this before, if you look at the makeup of our legislature, a lot of them, as far as business owners, it's the minority, right, that have that business experience. Right. So a lot of them need to just be, informed of this is what's important to the business community. And again, you have to just stay vigilant because there's so many other things at play here. And look at the numbers, Dale. It's mind-boggling to somebody like me, and I follow this every day, to follow the money. We're talking about billions and billions of dollars. It's your money. As one member said, it's our money. We should know where it's going to be spent and how it's going to be spent. And more importantly, we should have a say. And then if we don't like it, elections come and go. And that's the way to do it. And it's easier said than done, I understand. But I just think if there's a takeaway for everybody today is, wow, you hit it right on the head. This pandemic, worst economy in years, people are starting to recover. It's all about the money. It's all about the taxes and fees, the regulatory climate. Now is the time. If you're never going to, if a call to action, if now is not the time to respond to that call to action, Dale, I don't know what will be, right? I mean, it's, so it's just, I wish I had better news, and all the two things I wanted to mention, right? And this is going to be kind of interesting. The vote by mail, right? And the election's coming up November 3rd. Don't forget, I think there are going to be 2 ballot questions that New Jersey's going to have to answer. And you're going to start seeing the pros and cons for cannabis, right? New Jersey's poised to be, I guess it's the 13th state, I could be wrong, that would legalize recreational use cannabis. Big deal. You're going to start seeing campaign ads, pro and for, sorry, pro and against. That's one question. And then the other question is this redistricting that, it's not, it's important to people like you and I that understand how important redistricting is. Right. But think about too, the other thing that we're doing here is the census is taking place.
Right.
So think about that. The census is taking place at a time when people are leaving unemployed. Are they filling out the census? Why does that matter? Because federal dollars get assigned to that census. And we had an event, it was a few months ago now, where we had Tahisha Way, Secretary of State, to talk about how important the census is. And so there's just a lot going on, but I think it's important to, keep everything focused on what's important to business.
Yeah, I mean, it's a few years ago, we lost a congressional seat, right?
Yep.
So, I think we under 12, we had 13. And so, again, I've said this most weeks, is that if every politician had to have made payroll, this would be a very different country. And so one of the things that I'll offer from FDU Rothman, we're doing a lot of video for our awards. We're doing video interviews. Tony, maybe what we do is have people come and have them testify for a minute on a video that I can send to, you don't have to do anything, but come and say, this is the challenge in making payroll. I'm a small business owner in New Jersey. I'm a family business owner in New Jersey. I have to make payroll. These are the challenges that I face. And maybe we can put together a montage of those things. So we would be happy to do that. I have a show or something, and start sending them to legislators, because they don't understand. If you're a $30 million business, they assume you're taking that home. You know, if you have a bad 3 months, you could be out of business. And people don't, they think everybody has a cushy job. They don't.
Yeah, right. The margins are thin. That's
The
what
margins
everybody
are very
tells
thin.
me. If I'm a large company or small company, the margins are thin.
Right,
You know,
right, right.
it's think about how difficult it is now to make a profit, and it's been a struggle. But I'm with you, Dale, 100%, and I look forward to working with you. I just think, again, going back to, my hope is that we turn this around. Maybe not in 2020, but I want to put on everybody's radar. Think about 2021, Senate, Assembly, Governor up. Republican or Democrat, doesn't matter. Look at the world through the lens of the business owner. What is it that we want? And start thinking about 2021. Because as one person said to me, everybody's focused on national politics and and don't get me wrong, it's important. But somebody said to me, you know what really impacts people's wealth, businesses' wealth? Your local municipality, right? What's your local municipality's budget? What's their philosophy? What's their approach? What are their taxes and fees? Nobody really pays attention to that. And I think that was a good point that, we have to start at the local level, county, state, and then worry about the feds. And I think the opportunity is, and I could be wrong, but I think we won't see a Senate, Assembly, and Governor up for election for a few more years after that. So there's just a lot at stake,
Everything's happening at once. And so let's, before we go, so there's this big national election, and there's just chaos in every aspect. And I've looked at the some of the platforms of both of the candidates. Do you think that regardless who wins, we don't want to talk about any either side, but what do you think the future of small business is? Certainly there's uncertainty. What do you think with either candidate, no matter who wins, whether it's Biden or Trump? What do you think?
So I guess the first question is, are we going to wake up November 4th knowing who the winner is?
Well, yeah, and we probably won't if it's vote by mail, because it's going to take a couple days to count everything.
Yeah, it's a good question. And I know that the small businesses that I've talked to, they all say the same thing, Dale. They want this to be over with.
Yeah.
They want the election to come and go. But more importantly, they want a winner.
Yeah.
They really want to put this behind. As I was mentioning to you and Susan, a member said to me, I can't wait to celebrate New Year's Eve. And I said, why? And he's like, I just want, basically 2020 to come and go.
Yeah.
It's a bad year. So to answer your question, I think, obviously they want that certainty to come back. And they really want to feel the love, whether it's a Joe Biden or Donald Trump, is show the love for business, right? And we tell the state the same thing, show me the love. Why should I stay here? Why should I grow my business? One of the things that sets CIANJ apart is we're proud of the fact that we advocate for free markets. We really do think that what happens in a free market, that innovation comes in, that idea. Look what's going on with the vaccine, right? With the 3 leading Moderna, Pfizer, right? It's that you want to solve a problem, and it's okay, if you have a business component side to that. It's okay to generate a profit, and that's the innovation and the drive that I think makes New Jersey great. And we got to take advantage of our, one of the things that, we think about the logistics supply chain, and there are businesses that have thrived during this pandemic, and we all know who they might be, right? The food companies and the Amazons, right? I mean, they're thriving here. It's just, what is that new normal going to be? What is the economy going to look like in a virtual world? I mean, that's going to be where the shift is going to be, is, what businesses take off and what businesses have to adapt to a new world. And it's yet to be seen.
Well, and I've written and talked some about kind of democratic capitalism. I'm a big believer in capitalism, but democratic capitalism as opposed to plutocratic capitalism. And so what we're dealing with is a lot of people can pay for lobbyists and other things and get tax breaks, and the mom and pop shops, the small businesses, which are really what made this country, really don't have the representation that they need. And so it's important for them to support your chamber. It's important to come out and on a national basis. And so this idea of, as I said, democratic capitalism, where small businesses have a chance to really be successful, is really what I think most people in this country really believe. But a lot of folks don't fight for that. And I think we've got to fight for that. And we've got to not focus on, oh, well, I'm a Democrat or Republican, I'm for or against this person. We have to have our advocacy for our businesses. And I keep saying that, but I still don't hear it. I still don't hear people as committed as we need you to be to really be about that. So so now we're going to go to so the debate is on Tuesday, right? Is that
9 o'clock, right?
okay? And so I encourage, regardless of who you support. I mean, one of the things that I think is really important, Tony, is whoever wins, I would like a mandate, because I think if it's too close on either side, we're going to continue. Things are going to get even worse.
I agree.
So I really want somebody to win pretty handily, so that at least we can move forward. And whether we like the person or not, we've got to move forward.
Look, I'll leave you with this, and I follow the numbers, right? New Jersey has about 5 million registered voters, 5 or 6 million. Historically, a non-presidential election voter turnout in New Jersey is abysmal. It's 20%, 30%. I mean, think about that. 3 out of 10.
Yeah.
People park themselves. They don't get involved. I looked at the numbers for 2016, right, when it was Trump, Hillary. I think New Jersey was close to 60%, which was extraordinary. You know, think about that. Still 6 out of 10. You still got 4 people that didn't feel compelled to come in and vote. I think my gut's telling me this election, you're probably looking at 70 to 80% voter turnout. Because again, vote by mail. Right. Might make it easier for folks to vote. People are going to go in. But unfortunately, Dale, like you said, I mean, it's no matter what side you're on, it's a polarized environment. And again, I keep going back to, it's just not good for business. It really isn't. And so I think the voter turnout's going to be high, but I agree with you. You know, we need that mandate so things could start to normal off again, because what concerns me again is if the state runs out of money next year, it's just historically, you know, with spending cuts, it just doesn't resonate with them.
Right. Someone said it's going to be 110% if we have vote by mail. So
we could talk about voter fraud, right, for a while.
Voter fraud never happened in Jersey, so you know, just the dead people vote in Hudson County. But so again, as we end up. It's so important for people to speak up. And as you said, I mean, think about 40% of the people in a good year don't vote. And then we get what we get. And you've worked with the politicians. A lot of them know that. They know that I can do whatever I want. I can put in my little pet projects, and I can do, you know, I can do other things. And as long as I don't, you know, as long as nobody pays attention.
Look, Dale, I think the redistricting thing, which is on the ballot, which I guess postpones it, it's not going to happen next year. I think it's so important because, in my opinion, we need more competitive districts. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? It's just, again, not being a Democrat or Republican, the more competitive the district is, the more chances that you're going to get a candidate that's going to be appreciative of who's their constituents, businesses, and residents. And again, I think that only helps our democracy and not work against it.
Well, and one thing I've really heard from both very liberal folks and very conservative folks that agree on term limits. You know, I think that's one thing that Trump could have done early on, coming in as an outsider to really push that. Now, people who have term limits have to vote their own term limits, but why should I do that? And why would that be helpful? But well, again, you look at the age of legislators. You know, now technology is changing to have, you know, the only reason the stock market's doing well is because of the high tech. You know, the Dow Jones are high tech companies, and these are young people doing innovative things. We've got to get a younger group of people to be in office. And the reality now is that because of social media, it's very hard to beat an incumbent. Doesn't matter how bad they are, right? Yeah, it's almost impossible. So, you know, and you say, well, vote them out of office. And so I that's my thing. People may disagree, but I think it's time to get as much new blood as we can into the system so that we have new ideas and we're not doing the same old, and people have been there for 50 years.
Complacency is not good. Yeah, complacency is not good. So let me ask you a quick question. I know we're up against time, but because members have asked me whether or not the new stimulus plan will go through. I don't see it going through before the election. I don't know. I mean, it's just.
Yeah, I don't think so. It's, you know, everything stops. And this time next year, it's going to stop in New Jersey.
Yeah.
You know, nobody wants to stick unless it's going to be politically expedient. And then there's so much. I mean, just think about 2020. We'll look back on 2020. I mean, just think about all the things that are going. Now the Supreme Court justice fight in the midst of an election. You know, not to mention the pandemic fight, not to mention the international fight. I mean, just I mean, now I just read about, I think in France, they're looking at for the Tokyo Olympics, that there was briberies that got, I mean, it's like the whole world is going crazy. And so we as small business owners, and I have my own small business consulting firm, we need to be vigilant and focused and support and say, I am, and this is what we're kind of our motto for our Family Business Week is vote family business, vote small business. Just whatever you do, just vote your interest and don't let the other people tell you that this is a good person, this is a bad person. So any final word, Tony? And we're at time.
I just hope I'm right that voter turnout is close to 80% because that means people weighed in.
Yep.
And look, it'd be nice to get 100%, but I don't think we're there yet, unless,
And,
like the gentleman says, 110%. But
yeah, 110%.
but no, Dale, look, it's been a pleasure to work with you and the Institute and your colleagues, and obviously, the folks on the call today. I mean, it's just an ongoing battle, and we just have to stay committed and focused and not give up. It's two things that come to mind. You got to persevere and you got to put in that effort. I'll leave it at that.
You've got to do it. Well, Tony, again, I just appreciate, our friendship and your support, and you're just doing wonderful things. People don't know how hard you're working on behalf of the business community. So thank you all. And thank everybody for listening in. Again, this will be on our YouTube channel, so others will view in, but this is the key time. So advocate for yourself. So thank you again, Tony.
Thank you, Dale.
Sue and Maura, thank you. And have a great weekend, everybody. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.